Happy Tuesday. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Nick Tassel breaking down some GPP bets. We got a big 15 or 14 game slate. I like that DK is kind of leaving off the second games of double headers. I don't know. I just feel like it helps out. No more waiting for that damn lineup when game one wrapped up.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is a little confusing trying to figure out everything and scrambling like that. So that's a good idea. Hats off to DK, and I like how you changed up your script for the beginning. Happy Tuesday instead of welcome everyone. So I like it.
Thank you. Yeah, I figured I'd change it up a little bit. I've had the same breakfast for the last 3 years. I might as well change it up at least once.
And people want to know, what is that breakfast?
It's just waffles, just instant waffles.
Eggos?
No, store-bought.
So you just put it in the toaster, right?
Oven. I don't have a toaster.
No? Alrighty. I just don't find time for that, but it is what it is. Good for you.
All right.
Best now, right?
Let's get into some baseball picks.
All right. What do you got? Do we start on catcher like we always do, or are you gonna switch it up again?
No, we'll start catcher for the good of the people.
All righty. We're doing GPP picks, correct? Just
GPP picks, yeah.
Everyone knows. All right. Who you got?
I love Wellington Castillo. This is such a good spot for this Orioles offense, even though they've struggled against lefties as a team. Derek Holland is one where I will definitely load up on some Baltimore right-handers. Holland 381 WOBA to righties, 14 home runs already allowed this year to right-handers. Wellington Castillo always a notable lefty masher. He's been struggling a little bit as most of these Baltimore bats go. Friendly ballpark, friendly pitcher. This is a good spot to just jump on board.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Castillo is just a monster. I know a few years ago he had just crazy numbers against lefties, cooled off a little bit, but he's still in a great spot. And you look at Derek Holland, he's really not the best. So throw Castillo in there, and he's priced pretty cheaply too. So I don't mind that.
No, I don't either. Who are you looking at there?
Another guy too would be Devin Mesoraco. Not sure if he will be in the game, but if he is, he's been red hot lately, back-to-back home runs, going up against lefty here. It is a bad ballpark, but you know what? It is what it is. You always play guys in bad ballparks, and I shy away from it, so now I'm jumping on board.
I like it. And we look at Petco. It's actually seen some big runs over the last few days. Royals went out there. All of a sudden, the Royals were a power hitting team in Petco. Obviously, it was Bronson Arroyo on the hill last night, but Padres scored 9 runs.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is potential. And you look at Richard, and he's just given up so many hits over his last couple starts, I think almost 9 a game. So definitely things are going to happen there, even if Mesoraco doesn't go deep.
Yeah, no, I like that call a lot. Yes, Mike Grandal's a guy I'm taking a look at. Trevor Bauer attacking him was always such a boomer bust play, but look at Bauer this year, 380 WOBA to lefties, 39% hard contact rate. I like that Adrian Gonzalez is actually out of the lineup because I feel like he just hurts it.
Yeah, sometimes. So, yeah, I mean, Grandal, you look at Bauer, he really is up and down, and Grandal can have one of those games where he goes off. Better ballpark than the Dodgers typically, so I don't mind that pick there as well.
Anyone else you're looking at behind the dish?
I think you had Zunino maybe?
Yeah, Zanino's my other one. This guy's just absolutely on fire. A couple home runs over the last few days. I love the Seattle offense again. I love both sides of this. And you look at Bergman, not Bergman, Gibson, 390 WOBA to righties, 37% contact rate. So when Zunino's locked in, I don't mind targeting him. And I think even with the hot streak going, he'll still be less than 15%.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you do need to save a lot of salary, I wouldn't mind even throwing in Hedges. He bats in a pretty good spot in the order. Doesn't have the best batting average, but he has some potential. Feldman also isn't a good pitcher either. So, like you said, we could see a lot of runs here in Petco.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. More to first base, a fair amount of options here. And I feel like a lot of these guys are kind of nicely priced in like this mid to low 4 range.
Yeah, absolutely. I obviously like one of the top guys on the slate in Votto, just because going back to Richard, you'll get low ownership because it's a lefty in a ballpark situation, but he's been really good last 2 weeks. He's almost got like a point in every game, so I like him. But if we were to go a little bit further down, like you said, in the 4K range, one guy who kind of stuck out at me was Danny Valencia. He's been hitting righties a little bit better this year. against Kyle Gibson. He's pretty awful, and it is a better ballpark. So I definitely think Valencia is in play at a pretty good price.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to argue with any Mariners there. Um, I like Anthony Rizzo. I mean, Rizzo's been obviously, hitting the ball pretty well, hitting over 300 the last 2 weeks. Cubs offense definitely has not been good. Zach Wheeler still a respectable arm. I mean, getting a lot of strikeouts against lefties this year, but giving up a 42% hard contact rate, FIP around 4. So, I mean, Rizzo's a cheap guy who's usually, 5,200, 5,300. I like Citi Field when the weather's warm. It doesn't play that bad to lefties, so I'm kind of intrigued there.
I agree with you there. Going on the weather, it's been like 90 degrees up in the East Coast lately, so that definitely could benefit him. At 7 o'clock last night, it was still 92, so not a fan of that, but definitely a fan of playing Anthony Rizzo in situations like that.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that Washington Atlanta game. That's tons of runs there, and that was a game that was like 93 degrees at first pitch or something like that.
Yeah, it's really annoying, this global warming thing, even though it's only been here for like 2 days, but it is what it is.
Wasn't it just 50 and raining like a week ago?
Literally was. We actually are supposed to get thunderstorms later today, so hopefully it will cool up a little bit, because unfortunately I cannot be in AC today. I want to just shoot myself. But
man.
Back to baseball, right?
Back to baseball. Jose Abreu, 4,100. Alec Asher's sort of reverse splits pitcher. 347 woba to righties. Doesn't give up a ton of hard contact. Low ground ball rate, 40%, 1.77 homers per 9. Abreu on a full slate's certainly going to go overlooked, and I love his price tag.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at all White Sox guys, and they always go under-owned, especially on big slates. So I know we're not at outfielders, but even keep an eye on Avisail Garcia. So I like, who's that? What's his name? Abreu, that's his name, right? He definitely could do some damage. White Sox, I know the park hasn't been the best for hitters this year and even last year, but it definitely still is pretty viable.
Yeah, it definitely is. So, I mean, I think going down that road, I think we'll see another high-scoring game in Chicago. I wish Matt Adams didn't completely go off last night for 2 home runs because I liked him again tonight. But we'll talk about some Atlanta lefties in the outfield, but I don't mind Matt Adams if you're looking for a cheap guy. It just problem is recency bias. Trying to hit another home run in the second day and hit 3 is kind of tough.
Yeah, I'd probably stay away from him. Let the fish play him, right? Is that what they say?
Yeah, I think I'll only play him within the stack now.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. If you did want to save some salary, my guy would be Mancini for Baltimore. Kind of goes over the same thing we talked about with Holland. He's not very good. Righties can just take him deep at their will. So this is a pretty good spot for him. He's still priced pretty cheaply.
Yep, I like him. Moving to second base. There's a lot of options here, I feel like, and it's good on a full slate. I know you were looking at Jose Altuve, right?
Yeah, I'm throwing everything against Nick Martinez tonight. I mean, so many times does Nick Martinez have terrible games, and it just helps you out DFS-wise. So typically it doesn't really hurt. So Altuve, even though he is up there, I still like him.
No, I do too. I like the Houston Bats. I just think prices of some of these guys are going to scare people away, and I think it's a good time to get some little ownership on them. Even against Martinez, I still think it won't be as high as maybe it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking into Martinez, he's just been absolutely awful, giving up home runs, hits, everything. I know his ERA really isn't as bad as it's been in the past, but once you look past that, a lot of his other numbers are pretty terrible.
Yeah. And I look at second base. This is a really strong position tonight because I like Altuve. I like Brian Dozier. I know you like D. Gordon, who we'll talk about in a minute. I think Robinson Cano is my favorite option here. 4,400 against Kyle Gibson just seems way too cheap in a Minnesota ballpark that plays really nicely in the summer. As I say, Gibson's basically identical, 390 woba to lefties as well, 40% hard contact. I think everyone's going to cut into each other's ownership because Daniel Murphy's even right there at 4,300.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many guys right in that price range, especially on DraftKings. And you even look at Jed Lowry, he's 4,000, and Chase Utley's 39. So there's a lot of guys all bunched up around there, which could make ownership levels pretty low tonight.
Yeah. And then, like I said, I mean, you're looking at D Gordon, really good chance of stolen base upside tonight.
Absolutely, that's kind of what I'm going for. He has so much potential once he's on the base path. Sometimes he has issues getting onto the base path, but I think recently he's been pretty good. So I like to tend towards him. A little bit cheaper, so like you said, everyone's going to be jumbled up. There's so many players in second base that are priced so highly right now.
Yeah, so Jose Peral's a guy, 3,100, good cash game guy tonight. I don't mind actually, tossing him in again, but I love Wilmer Flores at the same price. This guy's a lefty masher. You go up against John Lester, who just doesn't look like he has it this year. I mean, strikeout rate's down a little bit against righties, 3.38 WOBA to right-handers, 1.24 homers per nine. I'm a little worried about Lester, but I still think he carries that name recognition where I can get Wilmer Flores at some nice price, especially if he's hitting fourth, because I know Cespedes left the game a little bit early last night.
Definitely, that's totally a possibility. Also, whenever someone against Lester's on the base pass, they're always a threat to steal, no matter how slow they are. So that's definitely a possibility too for Flores. Yes.
Yeah. Third base. Josh Donaldson, you like here against the rookie right-hander. This is a good spot for the Blue Jays, just given the fact that he did throw a ton of fastballs in his debut.
Oh, absolutely. Look at Donaldson. He's really been heating up lately, and I think he's priced third highest on the slate for DraftKings. So I think there's going to be a lot of people gravitating towards Lamb and even Sano. So I think his ownership might be a little bit lower, but I think the recency bias might also mess that up a bit. So I still like him. I still think he's going to have a really good game. I think his ownership rate is kind of jumbled right now.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. I mean, yeah, as you said, I mean, he's got 5 home runs over the last, week and a half or so. You mentioned Miguel Sano. I love Miguel Sano. I loved him last night. I had so much exposure to him, and he ended up going over 3. But this is a good night to jump back on board, given the fact that Bergman's reverse splits. He allows the highest WOBA to righties on the slate. Sano's just been, even his outs were hard last night, he just continues to get out, and it's just like he's lining out to the track. He's hitting the ground outs at like 110 miles an hour. I mean, he's still just dialed in.
Yeah, he is a real solid, good hitter. And because of yesterday and the day before, I don't think there might be too many people on him. So that might work out in your favor. And like you said, Bergman really is pretty trash. So I don't mind deploying Sano as well.
There's a lot of options in this range. I mean, you like a couple of those Reds bats. I don't mind Eugenio Suarez at 4,600. Bad ballpark, but that'll keep the ownership low. This guy hits lefties really well. You talked about Richard. I mean, this is a guy who's given up to right-handers at will, 368 WOBA. So, I mean, good chance to kind of get a sneaky, maybe Cincinnati stack in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't realize, but I have a lot of Cincinnati all over my board today. There's just a lot of opportunity. And you look at Richard, and even if he doesn't last long, I mean, a lot of these hitters could still do some damage, especially like Votto. I know we're at third base and you're talking about Suarez, but definitely I like Votto because a lot of people will be off him because of the lefty-lefty matchup, but don't let that scare you. Suarez obviously is in a good spot. He's a little bit better against lefties, so my only concern is how long Richard is going to go for, but I don't mind his price as well. And like you said, this is going to be a very interesting night because there's 14 games. Third base kind of probably is in the same position as second base, where the ownership's going to be it's going to be varied.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Chris Bryant's as cheap as I've ever seen him, 4,300. Kyle Seager, Manny Machado in really good spots at 4,100. So I think this is just going to be a spot where ownership's going to be completely played out. I don't see anyone who's just going to be like massively high owned over everyone else.
Totally, I agree with you. One guy to keep a look at that I don't mind. He's kind of pricey for me, but Anthony Rendon, he's kind of had a so-so week, but before that, he did some damage, was doing well. He's only really 1 for 4 in his career against the knuckleballer and Dickey, but he did have 2 walks, so it does show he's a little bit patient against Dickey, and Dickey this year really isn't himself. So I think Rendon could kind of have one of those games where he comes back, and like you said, a lot of runs scoring in Washington.
How are you treating Washington? I mean, we haven't talked about anyone yet. Are you just kind of more stacking them? Like, I think I'm only going to have a stack. I don't know if I'm going to play them as like one-offs.
Yeah, it might be tough. I think just because the slate, there might not be a huge ownership. I know obviously recency bias might change things, but I don't know. It's a tough thing. I think stack might be the way to go, but I think maybe a guy here or there would be okay. It's hard because it is like a huge slate, so you have to think what might work and to really maximize your points. Stack might not be the best on a day like today.
Yeah, it could just seem when it goes either way with Dickey. It's like he's either on or he's completely off, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the safe answer, I guess, would be only do one off and not a complete stack. But you never know. It all depends when you're doing roster construction.
Yeah, and I mean, if you build multiple lineups, I mean that changes things too.
Yeah, might as well.
So, Escobar was the guy you were looking at for cheap, hitting top half of that order against Sabathia. Escobar is just quietly one of those guys who like puts together solid games.
Yeah, absolutely. Could not agree with you more. He's got good numbers against CC Sabathia, 341 average, and I believe he's had a good amount of at bats. I don't like BVP, but when he's seen so many at bats, I kind of would tend to play him. Like you said, top of the order. He's priced pretty cheap. I don't like that he's third base, but obviously that happens. It would be nice if he was shortstop, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I don't mind him. More of a shortstop. Carlos Correa up against Nick Martinez. Correa's cooled off a little bit, but this is a good spot to get going again.
Absolutely. I mean, tonight's slate is, for me, it's not that difficult to pick on Nick Martinez. You just kind of have to go with it. For the most part, all the high-priced Astros bats, they have a lot of power within them, and it just depends on if they're going to come out tonight, which I think they're going to.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love Corey Seager. I mean, we're finally starting to get some power out of him. A couple home runs, a couple doubles out of the last few games. The power has been on and off throughout most of the season, but now we're starting to get it up and going again. We talked about Bauer. He's just one of those guys where he's either on or he's completely off, and he's just allowing a ton of hard contact. Strikeout rate drops against lefties, so Seager hitting second there in that ballpark, I like quite a bit. I'm curious to see that lineup. If I can get like 4 or 5 lefties rolled up in a row, I'm stacking some Dodgers.
Totally, I can definitely see that happening. Obviously, Bauer isn't that great, and Seager is a really good hitter, so I definitely like him in this spot too. And then for me, going back to the game that I keep going back to, Cincinnati, Zach Cozart, he's been phenomenal against lefties basically all year and even his entire career. Huge numbers going up against Richard. I mean, don't really have to say much. Richard's just, even when he's not giving up runs, he's giving up tons of hits, and that's not going to end well on most days. So definitely like Cozart here. He's a little spinoff from the higher price guys.
Yeah, no, I like him a lot. And I think, yeah, like you said, because he's kind of in a little price range in that ballpark, he's going to go really under-owned. And he has been really solid at the plate this year.
Totally. I mean, I know he's struggled a little bit in LA, but I think he's coming around again. So I definitely am going to deploy him. I think he's a little pricey though on DraftKings, a little bit better on FanDuel, but you know what? You just have to play the game and you got to do it some days.
Yep. Eduardo Escobar was kind of my cheap guy. Shortstop 3,300 on DK. I don't mind him. He's high twos on FanDuel. I like this Minnesota total tonight. I don't mind targeting kind of those like 5, 6, 7 guys in the lineup. I just think this is going to be another high scoring game.
Yep, totally. There's a lot of options too. My punk guy would be JJ Hardy. Going up against lefty. He does have some power. I know he bats pretty down in the lineup, so you probably will have to be patient with him. But if he's able to connect with one, it's pretty cheap power right there.
Yeah, definitely is. And if we get like a Washington bat, like a shortstop like Steven Drew or Romo Defoe, that's a nice pump play if they're in the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, as a Red Sox fan, it's kind of hard to play Steven Drew, but I could definitely look past it for DFS tonight.
You know who I miss? I miss JD Drew. He had such a nice swing.
I do. He just chilled. Like he never showed emotion except for game 7 of the ALCS 2007?
Yeah, that was his only time.
Yeah, that's the only time he showed emotion. He didn't care. Some days he'd be like, I got vertigo. I know it's a serious issue, so I'm not hating on people with vertigo, but like he just chilled, and I kind of liked him, but it's neither here nor there. Are we ready to go on to outfielders?
Yeah, let's go to outfield.
All right, who you got?
In terms of a top option, I mean, I think a lot of these guys are in play. I just find Mookie Betts to just still be so cheap. 4,600 against Ben Lively. I mean, this is a guy who's usually 5,400, 5,300, and we're getting him at 46, and he's been hitting the ball hard. He's starting to heat up again. I mean, 4-hit night last night with 3 doubles. He's got 4 doubles, 5 doubles in the last 4 games. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we haven't really seen the explosiveness out of him lately, but you have to scroll down like 10 to 15 guys on DraftKings before you get to Mookie Betts. So, I mean, top of the order, he's going up against a rookie who's making his 3rd start. And what's crazy about that rookie is he has pitched 14 innings and only has 3 strikeouts. So that's extremely alarming against a Red Sox team that has a lot of potential. So I definitely have no issues with deploying Mookie Betts.
Yep. I know you were looking at a couple of the top guys. Charlie Blackmon, absolutely on fire. This guy, he's going to be an NL MVP candidate. I like the price. I wish he was running a little bit more. He's not stealing as much as he was in the previous years, but there's a lot of potential here against Cole.
You just called he's going to be the MVP this year?
He's going to be a candidate. I would actually love for him to win an NL MVP.
I'd like for Corey Dickerson to win the AL MVP, but that's just me.
I like that. We got Dickerson, Blackmon, ex-teammates.
Yeah. But yeah, Blackmon has just been so phenomenal this year. I know he's up there in price, but he's just doing a lot of things. I know you wish that he would run more, but at the end of the day, a stolen base is 5, a home run's at least 14. So it is what it is. So I definitely don't mind Blackmon. Clearly, Garrett Cole isn't the same old Garrett Cole we've seen before. Not the best ballpark, which I think would lower ownership a little bit. But yeah, throw him in there. I know he's pricey, but just do it.
Cole's been absolutely awful and awful against lefties. I like him. And do you like Carlos Gonzalez? I mean, let me see what his price was. I know it was super cheap. 3,300 for Carlos Gonzalez against Cole.
I'm going to be honest with you. I always forget about Carlos Gonzalez now because he just really hasn't done anything all year. Coming into the season, he just destroyed right-handed pitching, whether it was in Coors or away from Coors. But this year, he's just fallen flat on his face. But, I mean, at that price tag, it's hard not to throw him in there. Just see what happens. Like you said, Cole has been trash. So going up against terrible pitcher, not a great ballpark, but you never know. Carlos Gonzalez was a phenomenal player pre-2017. So who knows? He might still have it in him tonight.
Yeah, he's super boomer bust this year, but I feel like at that price, I'll take some shots.
Yeah, 3,300 is extremely cheap. And maybe stack him with Blackmon, see what happens.
Yeah, I definitely don't mind that. Who else? I know you like Cody Bellinger. He was one of the Dodgers you were taking a look at.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we just talked briefly about Bauer. Bellinger, he's a really good hitter. He has his ups and downs like most young hitters. But I really like this ballpark. It definitely benefits him a lot more than Dodger stadiums. And like you said, he's kind of like the right-handed Francisco Liriano to me. You just never know what you're going to get. You could have a completely terrible game where he gives up so many walks, but then he could have a good game. So, I mean, it's definitely a GPP pick when throwing in Dodgers, but Bellinger is one of the guys I like.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think there's a lot of nice kind of solid price outfielders on the slate, like Jose Bautista, 3,800 on DK. He's continuously been cheap. I know he's been struggling a little bit, but Blue Jays are in a sneaky spot here, and people are high on Faria, and I understand him. He's a good right-handed pitcher, but he just threw a ton of fastballs, and I just don't think that's going to be good against the Toronto team in the Rogers Center.
No, absolutely not. This could be a pretty good game for a lot of their Blue Jays hitters. And another guy staying in that game that I like would be Pilar. I think he's pretty cheap. He's a good leadoff hitter. And I just think he always ends up doing something. So I don't mind him here.
No, I don't either. Mitch Haniger back in action. Huge game, 4 for 6 last night against Kyle Gibson. I'm back in play. Haniger was terrific before he hit the DL, and I'm going to get him before that price tag starts to rise up even more.
Yeah, totally. You know that's going to happen soon. Staying in that game, I also don't mind Ben Gamel if he's in the lineup. He was a pretty good hitter. And like we talked about, there's a lot of potential here going up against Gibson.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you. Malik Smith, if he's leading off, I like him for the Rays quite a bit. I mean, Kiermaier's he's out for a couple months. You look at Estrada, I don't think he's a bad option tonight. He's just been one of those guys who's been like slowly kind of starting to lose form a little bit. So this might be a good shot to jump on some Rays in a contrarian sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we haven't touched on Estrada, but he actually, I mean, last 2 games haven't been the greatest. Last game was okay, but it was against Oakland. So that definitely benefited him. But you look back, and his ERA is a little bit lower in Rogers Center, but his fly ball rate's still up there, more so than on the road. So I think that might combine here against a bunch of lefties who can put the ball in the air in the Rays. So I kind of agree with you. I know we haven't talked at all about the Rays, but a lot of them are kind of in play.
Yeah, I think so. And what are you doing with the Baltimore outfielders like Adam Jones, Mark Trumbo, Joey Ricard? They're all really cheap. I mean, Mark Trumbo's been struggling. He's 3,400. I mean, that's really cheap for a guy who at times in his career has matched lefties, and all of a sudden he looks lost against him. But Holland's just so bad.
Yeah, I could definitely see playing even all 3 of them. Trumbo is an interesting guy just because he hasn't really performed like you would have expected him to this year. Jones, to me, he's pretty consistent, so I don't mind kind of deploying him in almost any matchup. And then the other guy, Rickard, as long as he's in a good spot, I like him too.
Yeah. So, a quick note for me: I like the Atlanta lefties against Joe Ross, Markakis, Inciarte, Adams. Joe Ross had a really good start last time out, and that was against a Baltimore team that rolled out about 7 right-handed bats. Atlanta in a good spot to roll out a couple of lefties against them. And Joe Ross, 4-away wOBA to lefties, 38.5% hard contact rate. So I'm not looking at Joe Ross tonight. I like the other side of it. I'm just my note because of how he performed last time out against Baltimore. I think people are going to be really high on him.
Yep, couldn't agree more on that. Also, another guy thrown in there would be the Yankees bats. I think they've just been so good lately, but I think it's a bad ballpark for them, so it might not be the greatest. So definitely pick your spots, but probably wouldn't do all 3 of them. But definitely throwing one of them in with some potential is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to get him at low ownership just because of what you said, basically that ballpark, and then we get a 14-game slate.
Yeah.
So
I got one last one.
Fire away.
All righty. I'm continuing with the narrative of old team, Daniel Nava.
Daniel Nava, revenge game?
No, he did well yesterday. I think he's just going to keep piling it on.
Oh, man. Daniel Nava.
Almost back in AAA like last year, but he somehow managed to make the squad in Philadelphia, which I feel like I could even make. So, I mean, it's not like a huge accomplishment. But going up against Price, I don't know. He switches over, something might happen.
Oh, boy.
You got probably the lowest ownership you'll ever see, though.
He's by far going to be, like less than 1%.
He will, and it'll happen.
And that 1% is going to be you.
Yes, it will. It's a very sad day when he goes 0 for 7, but it is what it is.
Any parting words?
Not really. I mean, we learned a lot about you today, about your breakfast routine, so I think that was good. But nothing else I got to say. No,
plenty of value on this slate. I don't think there's a lot of weather issues. Usually we get a couple pop-up thunderstorms, but I haven't seen anything in terms of delay threats or postponement threats. So there's a lot of value. There's a lot of cheap power potential. So I think this is a spot you pay up for pitching, which seems pretty obvious given the fact that Kershaw, Greinke, and Price are on the slate. So that's how I'm going to be building tonight.
Yeah, that probably is the most sense.
So let's wrap things up here. You can head over to DaveFantasyCafe.com, check out our great tools and content.